MBTI 是家喻户晓的人格测验，但是要怎么运用这个测验来帮助你在职场上的沟通呢？今天就让我们来帮助你了解该如何运用不同资讯处理的方式来有效说服主管。Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 Podcast。I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast. 我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. Almost everyone out there has heard of the MBTI, the Strength Finder, or many other personality tests. They're a lot of fun to get a better understanding of our strengths, our weaknesses, and how our personality works. But today, we want to talk about how do you practically use what you know about your MBTI profile to put it to use in the office through better communication and understanding how other people want to receive information. And to help us do that today is our wonderful intern Hazel, who's done a fun deep dive into this project and is going to share some insights about what she has learned both from the research and also in life experience about how we look at one specific aspect of the MBTI test.
那大部分的人应该都知道 MBTI 这个 personality test。那如果你还没有做过的话，你可以到16 personality， 当然是要听完我们这个 episode 才能去做这个 test。那我们今天呢就不会讲太多其他关于这个 test 啊，有4个层面嘛。那我们今天只会 focus 在一个层面，也就是 sensors 跟 intuitives， 也就是这些人是怎么样来 process information， 怎么样去吸收，怎么样去消化 information. So let's welcome Hazel.
Hello everyone, my name is Hazel. I'm one of the interns in Personality. It's nice talking to you.
As Sherry laid out, this test is most associated with those 4 letters that everyone will rattle off after they've taken the test. Be like, oh, I'm INTJ or ESFP or some combination of these letters. Today, we want to deep dive on that processing of information, which is the second letter of the MBTI test, whether a sensor or intuitive. So Hazel, could you walk us through a little bit what separates out a sensor versus an intuitive? What are the key components of these two types?
So the main difference between these two are the way they perceive the world and they absorb informations. For sensors, they are detail-oriented and they love specific information being presented and they focus on practical reality. For example, when they are looking at a painting, instead of trying to figure out what the artist is trying to say, they look into the details, such as the lightings and all the objects in the picture. And they tend to refer to the past experiences, and they are more convinced by ideas that's been proved to be true. And when mastering their skills, they like to rely more on the feedbacks from others. These are the traits of a sensor.
And since I'm the only sensor in this room right now, I will tell everyone. So 我也是 sensor， 其实我是唯一一个 sensor 的，在这个 recording studio 当中。那就跟刚刚Hazel所讲的，如果我今天是看一个 painting 好了，我真的是注意它的，比如说颜色啊，它用了什么颜色，它画了什么样的 object， 我真的绝对不会去想说这个 artist 想要 convey 的是什么感觉。I don't care about that. I really don't. I think it's really true. When I hear a new information or a new project or someone present a new project to me, I really care about these like detailed information like 什么时候要交啊 like what's the deadline where do you want to do this? Or what are the components? 我会开始问一些这些比较细节的东西。And I only realized this after I'd taken this test and after Hazel talked about this difference between processing information.
I would jump in there and say that it's definitely true, as someone on the other side will talk about intuitives later. But when perceiving how a sensor works, it's a very different look at it. So when Sherry and I plan things together, she'll be very much like into the details of like, what do you mean by this? Can you give me an example? Can you go into this thing? And I'm still trying to operate like hold on, I haven't talked about like the whole picture. I have not covered, where we're going. And she definitely is someone who doesn't appreciate, like, I have a tendency to talk in generalities. For her, it's just like, well, what do you mean by that?
I don't appreciate.
Can you explain all the pieces to me so that I can get the full picture on how to do that?
So sometimes I could be a little bit impatient because I don't have all the details that I want right away. And 我觉得透过这个 personality test, 我觉得比较能够让我了解说，好啦，每个人有他不同吸收 information 的方式。It's not about like, are they rejecting you or not liking your ideas? It's just about different types of processing information.
So speaking of the different types, Hazel, could you give us a little bit more context on the other side, the intuitive side?
Okay, so in comparison to the sensors, N stands for intuition. So intuitive people are known to be more conceptual and abstract in their thinking. That's why they think more about the message in a painting. Because they are more creative and they have more imagination. And they prefer the big picture, the context, than details. For example, when in the presentation, an intuitive would like to know more about the whole picture, the vision, and the expected outcomes first, and then details being added later. And they also like to learn through metaphors and patterns. So when talking a new idea to them, it's good that if you can use some metaphors or do some compare and contrast to better understand what you are talking about.
Hazel, you yourself identify as an intuitive when taking the test. I would be curious, as after reading this, have you identified any patterns or anything that you do, like in your own life, or examples that you can share, where this really comes through, where you're thinking more in terms of patterns or in big picture concepts, as opposed to starting from the details?
Yeah, I think I need things to be organized and directed in a certain way. For example, when I'm organizing my clutter, I get overwhelmed because they are so much in my bedroom. And instead of putting them into their place one by one, I would like to sort them into several categories so that I have a big picture of how this organizing is going to be like. So that makes things easier for me.
So, but what about you, Nick? Because you're also an intuitive. And let's say if I'm presenting an idea to you, and this happens a lot, I tend to, because I'm a sensor, I really tend to just talk about more of the details. But the first question that you would always ask me is, why? Why are you doing this? What's the purpose behind this?
I would say that if you look at a pattern of the way I ask questions, I have a tendency to ask questions as a way to break down the big picture or the internal motivation behind why people are doing certain things. So when I do a lot of this pitch or presentation coaching, I have a tendency to let the person go through the entirety of their pitch or presentation, and then I'll start picking apart using pretty big questions like, what's the purpose of this presentation? And even though that sounds like quite open or general, it's a way to get people to think back and be like, okay, well, why are you doing this? Why does your audience care? What do you want your audience to do? And I'll start asking questions to put this bigger picture together before I start picking apart like their slides. Like I won't be like, okay, go to slide 17. This sentence, what did you mean by that? I will tend to think in terms of like, what's the first section about? Why are you opening this way? Why is the second section where it is? And it's kind of like fitting those puzzle pieces together as opposed to getting into the nuance of different things.
So I'm just really I'm wondering. 那我知道 Hazel 在做这个 research 当中，他有发现这个，就是如果我们今天真的不知道主管或者我们这个简报的对象他是什么样子的 personality type 好了，我们不可能直接去问人家说 what's your personality type?
Tell me your 4 letters. Go.
但是在不知道的情况当下，我们要怎么有什么 hints， 我们大概可以知道说，比如说这个人他常说什么样的话，或者是他会问什么样子的问题，我们可以大概去了解一下他是什么样子的人。Is there any hints like that?
Yeah, so when we are in a conference, we can detect some of the types of your colleagues or manager. A sensor is most likely to say things like, let's look at this step by step and consider the detail. They are least likely to say, let's not worry about too much about the facts and details. Let's jump into the action. If your manager say things like they want more details, they want to step by step, they are probably a sensor. However, an intuitive is more likely to say, just give me an outline. I don't worry about the detail. So if your manager is someone who prefers the big picture first rather than the small details in your presentation, he or she may be an intuitive because he wants everything has an outline and they want a big direction, the main direction of everything you said.
One thing I think to get out of this is it's not necessarily about is one side detail-oriented versus not detail-oriented. They both care about details, but a lot of it is the direction they come from it. With an intuitive is I want details only when I'm convinced that you have a broader understanding or you have a big picture or a vision in place. Then you can give me the details. Whereas when you're on the sensor side, is they want to start with the details, they want the concrete examples as proof that we're going somewhere with this. Like you can't just talk in big picture thinking or generalities. I need to know that there's some kind of grounding. There's a detail that's backing all of this.
So basically, in order for a sensor to be persuaded, right? 我们现在在讲就是说服. In order for sensor to be persuaded, we really need a lot of details, a lot of, I wanted to see that this person knows where this is going, what are the action steps, is there any deadlines, have they outlined the timeline yet? I need to see that before I become persuaded or before I feel like, all right, let's do this. Yeah, I think that's really for me. But I think for intuitives, and Nick, you can definitely jump in anytime, you need to know that where this fits in the grand scheme of things, right? Let's say 如果我今天想要 propose 一个新的课程放在我们的 premium 上面, I need to tell you how it fits in the grand scheme of things in our brand, in our company for the next 5 years. And then if you're persuaded now, then I give you the details. Yeah.
Right. And what we're getting at this is it's one thing to understand your own personality type. That's where a lot of people, I think, they take this test, they understand, they read about themselves, and they go, all right, good, that's me. I'm done. But the truth is to maximize the value in any type of test, whether it's MBTI, whether it's StyleFlex or Strength Finder, is about understanding how you take your strengths and communicate with other people and how you understand where other people are coming from. Hazel, I think you've told us there's a great example using the Beatles, the famous band, where this is a great example of collaboration between these two styles.
Yeah, and I've heard it from YouTuber talking about MBTI, and from which I found that John tends to write lyrics in a more intuitive way, which is more abstract and contains more metaphors that you need some imagination to know what the idea is being conveyed. Whereas Paul is writing in a more direct and literal way. He writes things that he's encountered and what's in the blog, what's in the house, and who he met. It's quite visual and easy to imagine.
This is definitely, although the Beatles have had very public issues with each other, etc. But getting into that is there is a cohesion, there is a potential for collaboration, which allows you to go much further. Again, the Beatles have crossed genres, they have changed their style of music, what they are known for, their own personal image, and it's evolved in such a way, but it still allows each personality to shine. And I think that's a big takeaway of when you look at these personality tests is the real collaboration, the real things start to connect when you understand how other people operate. And then you can work in tandem with that, not change who you are to work with them, but understand how they think, use your strengths, find their strengths, and bring them together.
Yeah, and also try to observe colleagues, your clients, and also your boss as much as possible. Obviously, you're not going to know each one of their personality types, and it's not a requirement. But through observation, you will know just what they preferred and how they tend to take on information. And yeah, I really hope that this episode brings some insight for you guys, especially when it comes to communication with different people at work. And I definitely will look up the lyrics from the Beatles now.
A big thank you again to Hazel for putting together the outline, doing the research, and really sharing deeply on this topic with us. Be sure to check out our show notes. We'll leave a link to somewhere where you can take a free version of the MBTI and look at what your 4 letters might be. Now, again, as a warning, when you take this test, don't just look at yourself. Think about the people around you. How would you interact with them, especially if they're a different type than you, and learn from the strengths of your personality along with how you can communicate better with others. We hope you enjoyed this, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production. Produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communication R&D, and email us at sherry@epstyleplus.com.